So that's an Emek. Normally they don't shoot that fast, pulling the trigger fairly slow and not shooting that fast. But this one has the double trigger kit on it from Super Stanchi Customs, as well as the Deadly Wind Hair 45 valve. The first time I saw that double trigger kit was when we did the Emek build a few months ago. Super Stanchi also helped with some parts of that build, my favorite being the little like cover or cap that goes in the foregrip to help hold an Allen wrench. The thing was pretty cool. So when they were sending over some parts for that, I was like, I don't know, why don't you just throw this double trigger kit in there? And then when I get to it at some point, you know, we'll make one of these double trigger kit videos. I didn't really expect it to be anything crazy. Is it just a double trigger? And I don't know, just kind of thought it'd be a little bit fun video to do. So when you buy the kit, it's pretty simple though. You're gonna get a few parts. You get that double trigger guard. You're gonna get a frame screw that's used to attach the trigger guard and, you know, hold the back of the frame on just like the factory frame screw. And you're gonna get the CS1 trigger mount that's actually replacing the stock trigger of the Emek that uses a CS1 trigger as well. So you get the mount, and then you can pair it with any CS1 trigger. And I'm gonna actually use the Super Stanchi Deuce trigger that's made for the CS1, or, you know, here we're gonna use it for this double trigger. I mean, it really is pretty simple. It's a basic kit, and you can kind of probably also tell if you're getting trigger guard where this kind of leads to. You do have to cut off the trigger guard. So right here, I was just using a hacksaw and just kind of hacked it off. It's pretty easy, and I kind of like made it a little bit nicer with some sandpaper. You could maybe use a Dremel or something if you want. It's really easy to just install the thing. It's really not bad. And then you replace the stock trigger with that included trigger mount. And then, like I said, in my case, I'm gonna use that Deuce trigger from Super Stanchi. To install the trigger guard, you really just kind of like, you know, put the screw through the front of the trigger guard to be the front frame screw. And then the back part of that trigger guard, you kind of put on, and then you want to put the grips over that bottom little tab, helps secure it in place. It does kind of move to side a little bit, and you can wiggle it around. But I don't think it's going to be an issue playing. I mean, we're not really like banging the trigger guards hard on stuff in the first place. It's kind of just there so you don't like, you know, accidentally hit the trigger and shoot the gun. So the trigger guard isn't like super secure, but I don't know. I don't really think it's going to be a problem. That trigger mount has two adjustments. You get a pre-travel and a post-travel. And for me, that's really all I need. I don't really think I need the trigger activation, as I'm not like one of those guys to like micro fine-tune guns. And I think with these mechanical guns, especially with this Emek and set up with the Deadly Wind stuff at least, you really don't need that micro fine adjustment. I'm fine with just being able to adjust how far the trigger goes forward and how far it goes back. So while like I'm not getting all the major adjustments you might get from some other triggers for the Emek, just having those two adjustments, I don't know, it's fine for me and I can adjust it really good. It does kind of suck though, because this gun isn't really set up to be externally adjustable trigger, right? It's not a stock feature. You do have to remove the trigger and like a plate on the inside, you know, and it's kind of a process to adjust the trigger. But once you get it, you know, it's done. And you really only kind of adjust triggers once on paintball guns. At least that's been my experience. I'm not, you know, changing the trigger every time I go out. A few weeks ago, I went to Extreme Paintball in Modesto, California to try this thing out. I started out with just using that stock valve and then switched over to that Deadly Wind Hair 45 valve. I'm going to run a few clips here to kind of get an idea of how both of those valves shoot. And I think it's pretty obvious when I switch over. I mean, that's kind of crazy for a gun that's, you know, just mechanical. I filmed that first section of B-roll and I'm like, yeah, okay, the gun shoots a little bit quicker. Maybe I can get the snapshots off a little bit faster or something like that. So then I go back, put the Deadly Wind Hair 45 valve in there. And it's crazy, right? Like, it is insane how much different it is, right? Like, it is so much lighter that I can shoot this gun so fast. I mean, even just with this Deuce trigger, like the double trigger, right? Hair 45 valve, and the trigger's a little bit adjusted. I mean, I probably could make it a little bit shorter. I don't have the trigger spring in there though, so the trigger is very light. And it's just crazy how fast I can shoot it, right? Like I think, shoot this faster than my G04. I could shoot it faster than the LV 1.6. It's pretty crazy. I don't know why. I think it's just in my hands. It feels really good. But I mean, you know, I'm shooting this thing 15 balls a second, something like that. It's kind of wild. But because it's like the mechanical, right? You know, it's not an electronic gun. You have to make sure you pull the trigger all the way, because when you're pulling the trigger, you're actually moving an O-ring inside that valve. So if you don't pull the trigger all the way, you pull it halfway or something, you can get like skipped shots or shutters, or like the bolt not firing or cycling all the way. So sometimes, you know, if you're trying to shoot really fast, like I tried it sometimes, you would get some like weird shots like that. But that's kind of expected, right? You just gotta, you know, pull the trigger all the way. It's pretty crazy. I don't know. I shouldn't be like completely shocked and blown away by this though. I mean, like, we have installed those deadly wind valves in a lot of things before, but just never double triggers, right? It was always in a single trigger gun. And you're like, yeah, the trigger's quite a bit lighter, but it's still single trigger, so we're still kind of limited to that rate of fire. But now putting the double trigger on it, it's just kind of crazy, right? It's really pretty wild. But it's an odd thing, right? Like, why do this? Like, there's really probably no point in it, right? It's just kind of a novelty, and at least for this channel, it's just kind of fun stuff to do. Definitely doing this kind of stuff makes it not tournament legal. So even in the mechanical stuff, like we're bringing back all these mechanical and pump things, even that, you can't use this gun because it has a double trigger. So you can't use it in, like, you know, the tournaments with like the NXL, because they're gonna make you cap the rate of fire. And then you can't even use it in some of the mechanical tournaments because they're requiring, you know, single trigger guns. You can't just be like, just crazy full auto and mechanical gun. So I don't know, maybe this doesn't make all that much sense. Maybe you got like an old busted Emek laying around or something like that. Maybe you got 2 or 3 of the things. You can pick one of these kits up for only $30. So it's kind of a fun little project. I mean, $30 makes it kind of a fun, cool paintball gun, but you do have to chop that trigger guard off. So be committed.